Hello, my friends, and welcome to the 10-minute book talk where three best-selling authors talk all things bookish with you for 10 short and sweet minutes. I'm Rachel Linden, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Marie Bostwick, who's holding the grand design that we're going to talk about today. Usually Katherine Reay is with us, but she is off on a grand summer adventure, and so she's not with us for a few weeks. But today we have the distinct pleasure of talking with Joy Callaway about her historical novel, The Grand Design. So Joy, thank you for being with us. And can you give us a short synopsis of the story?
Yes, I'm so glad to be with you guys today. It's such a nice little break in the midst of a really hot summer day. So my book, The Grand Design, is set in 1908 and 1946, and it centers on the famed interior designer Dorothy Draper, and it's set at the Greenbrier. And it kind of talks about how the Greenbrier and a love she found at the Greenbrier as a young woman influenced her bold shift from Gilded Age iron heiress to CEO, which at that point in time would have been quite a jump and a scandal. So that's the gist of the book. And yes, here's my lovely title. Lovely cover. This is actually the presidential suite at the Greenbrier, which is really neat. That Dorothy designed for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor upon the grand opening, the reopening rather of the Greenbrier after World War II.
Oh, so and it's a gorgeous cover. Special. I love that green. Wow.
Well, and I'll tell you, the whole concept of the Greenbrier and this gorgeous cover is what drew me to this book. I had it, I pre-ordered it even before I met you or heard of you or knew you were going to be on here. So I was very excited. And I want you to know, I wore my
best Marie
pattern in, I'm wearing all the patterns in homage to you and to Dorothy Draper. But so I've been interested in Dorothy Draper for a long time, but tell us, like, what first sparked your interest in this story, and when did you first hear about her? All that stuff.
So my family actually is like 8 generations in West Virginia, before it was West Virginia, when it was Virginia. So a long time ago. And because of that, we actually have vacationed at the Greenbrier ever since I was a little kid. But even, before that, generations prior, we would have like kind of family reunions on both sides of the family. We actually it's rare, but we have my mom's side of the family, my dad's side of the family are friends, and they really enjoy getting together too. So it's both sides of my family that come and do this fun, family reunion every year. Oh, and so I've been familiar really with the Greenbrier ever since I can remember. And of course, because of that, I've always been familiar with Dorothy Draper somewhat, because of her designs, because the Greenbrier is this huge testament and kind of museum to her bold and bright colors that are just so joyful. Her whole deal was basically, trying to make people joyful in the spaces that they were in, even if that was a temporary thing. She wanted to encourage joy. Honestly, this story came to me because historical novelists, you're always like, every time you're in a historic place, you're sitting there thinking, what's a story? What's a story? I got to write a novel set here. And the Greenbrier is such a special place to me that I've always known I wanted to write a book set at the Greenbrier. I just didn't know quite what that was. And one time we were actually sitting during our family reunion having high tea, which Marie, you know about since you've been to the Greenbrier before.
Yep.
They have a free high tea for the guests at 3:00. And we were sitting in the Victorian writing room, which is this lovely room, obviously decorated by Dorothy Draper. It's got a really beautiful old writing desk and stationery still today, and envelopes so you can write letters and mail them home. It's a really beautiful place. And we were sitting there, I was sitting with my grandpas actually. And I had just come off of a history tour too, because they have free history tours. The historian actually just resigned after 45 years, I believe, of being the resort's historian. And I was just coming off one of the tours there. And one of my grandpas said, "Hey, Joy, look up there. There's a wire running around the top of the room. I did that. I helped install the fire alarm system at the Greenbrier back when it was being redecorated, back when Dorothy Draper was doing it." And it's a long story, but he grew up in Burlington, North Carolina, but his dad was actually a ribbon mill manager. And his last job before retirement was in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, where the Greenbrier is. And they lived in this really cool old home there. And my grandpa would come home from Duke, where he was in school, and for the summer. And they needed, in the 40s, they said, we need somebody to help install the fire alarm system. And he was studying to be an engineer. So he went over and helped and saw some of the things being installed, which is crazy. So he mentioned, that to me, and then my other grandpa chimed in and he was like, you can't really separate the legacies of Dorothy Draper and the Greenbrier. They're kind of just now so woven together. And that's the truth. The Greenbrier was a World War II Army hospital. So during that time, like all the finery had just been completely stripped away. And it had been previously, a place for kind of America's aristocracy to vacation. And Dorothy came and revitalized it and brought it back to what it had been before. And then, now, so obviously the legacy couldn't have continued without her. And at the same time, her legacy at the Greenbrier has been continued for 60 some years now, through her protege, Carlton Barney, who runs her company, but also because of the commitment of the Greenbrier to maintain those designs, because it is so important to its history. And so I thought a light bulb kind of went off and I was like, yep, there's my story.
It's amazing. It is an amazing place to be. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but anyway, so pop in.
I love that. So we talked a little bit about, actually, I feel like my next question was about research, but you're living the research and your grandfather is contributing to the research. So that sort of answered that question. I think that's just amazing to have that personal connection. And I think Marie was going to ask you, have you spent time at the Greenbrier, which
but
obviously
I do. I think on the research question though, so we know about Dorothy's design, obviously, but I didn't know about this very scandalous relationship. I mean, did you know that going in? What was your research? Did you go how did you find out about that stuff? Because that is not a thing I knew about Dorothy.
No, and I didn't know much about Dorothy, honestly, when I first started. I just knew I liked her designs. I love color. I'm definitely an optimist, and I just have always loved her designs, and walking in there does prompt such joy. You walk in the place and you're just surrounded by color and it's beautiful. But I didn't know much about her otherwise. I just knew I liked her stuff and I liked what she stood for. And I started diving in and realizing, wow, this is really interesting. And I definitely picked the right person to tell this story, because she was she's an iron heiress on her mom's side. And this is during the Gilded Age. So for any fans of the movie or the show Gilded Age, this is right in that sweet spot, is where she grew up. She grew up among, the Astors, the Vanderbilts, people like that. She was one of them, totally. And she, on her dad's side, it was iron. On her mom's side, it was shipping. And she grew up in Tuxedo Park, New York, which was they also had a town home in the city too, on Fifth Avenue. But, they had their Tuxedo Park home too. And, Carlton Barney her successor has written several books about her, some biographies and things like that. But what else gave me a lot of color and insight into her was I love newspaper archives, because back then that was kind of the lifeblood of society. Of course, there's no social media and no really TV, so everything was printed in the newspapers, and it was fascinating to me to hear her quoted and to see all the things she had done that I had no idea she was doing. But I will say that what always interests me too is that when people do that 360, which is what she did, where you would go from heiress, and it was a scandal to be a businesswoman if you were a well-to-do, basically American princess back then. You just never would have done that. That would have signified your family was in trouble, and that you really couldn't help it, that you had to work, and that was scandalous. So I always wondered, what prompted her move from heiress to CEO. And there's some more subtle answers that I think helped me, in my research, but I think I always was just curious. So for so many of us, you have a birthday, the day you got married, probably your kids' birthdays, maybe some notable things that happened in your life and your death day. And that's kind of what you see on ancestry.com or something like that. Right. And with her, there's so much information about her career and really about her childhood too. But those teen years, I was always fascinated to see what happened in those teen years to really give her the courage to follow her gifts at a time when it wasn't easy. And so those were what I was really interested in. And so I started getting hints from, newspapers.com or, reading obviously Mr. Barney's books and things like that. But just kind of digging up her everyday life to try to piece together what would have kind of prompted her to dare to be someone different from the way she grew up. I don't know if that answers your question.
Totally. That is fascinating. Thank you. Okay, so readers, if you like historical fiction, if you like fashion, if you like the Gilded Age, if you like bright, happy prints that bring joy, and I feel like all of us fall in one of those categories, then pick up The Grand Design by Joy Callaway and learn more about the fabulous and fascinating Dorothy Draper. So thank you, Joy. And we are going to ask the last question that we always ask, and that is, what is bringing you joy today?
Well, I will say summer makes me really happy, and my kids are home, which some people are like, I don't know if I like that. I love it. I happen to love when my kids are home because I get to do things that like I get to be kind of a kid myself. And so today we went and we picked blueberries today at a local farm, and that was so much fun. And so I'm really looking forward today to baking a cobbler and grilling out, stuff like that. I think that's going to be a really fun day. So it's so joyful, and it's a blessing to be able to be out in nature with people you love. So that's really what I'm thankful for today.
Perfect summer. Thank you so much, Joy. Tune in next week for more book talk fun, and make sure to check out The Grand Design.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Bye.